Okay, so I realized halfway through the video I forgot to turn my mic on. I'm going kind of slow, so just pause the video and read the book. I'm sorry about that. Sister Cornelia moved along behind me at precisely the same length of stride, while the group of thugs waited expectantly at the bottom of the stairs. Waited for me, no doubt. Also, the music's not going to be coming through. Okay, I'll deal with this in a moment. Hitting the midway point of the stairs, Sister Cornelia suddenly whispered in my ears, "Keep your eyes on the ground, Toby." I did as I was told and cast my gaze down upon the tips of my boots, stained to a darker shade by the rainwater. Then right at the moment I had let out my breath, I felt a deep sense of pressure just below my shoulder blades as I was forcefully shoved forward. Droplets flew from my saturated fingers and my robe turned upside down as I tumbled down the stairs and slammed my back into the first group of hoodlums. With a muffled crunch, I felt the painful sensation of my ribs crumple under the weight of my body and then return to the normal form from their severely compressed state. Two of those seemingly military men who were hit as I toppled down the stairs, like an avalanche unleashed upon a pair of young saplings, absorbed the transfer of force and were thrown into a large puddle collecting on the ground nearby. Shrieks erupted from several passengers nearby, more shrill than the high-pitched sound of the railway brakes from its accelerating locomotive. As my world spun wildly about me, I lay there, the chill of the tiles seeping into my back. With a concerted effort, I rolled my eyes to the left where my arm remained in an outstretched state. By some act of the goddess, I managed to keep my tight five-finger grip on the bag I had been carrying. In an effort to get up, I slid into a prostrate position, keeping my chin in contact with the ground. Making a low visual sweep of the vicinity, as if my life depended on it, I noticed the military-like physiques of the men had vanished from view. The only figure I saw standing above me now on the platform was that of Sister Carnelia, and on her shoulder, as if she were merely hefting a sack of grain, was one of the men. Turning in the direction where the train sat in its motionless state, she led the unfortunate man down onto a set of empty rail tracks below. By the time I had risen to one knee, while keeping the other placed firmly on the ground in a half-standing position. The world in front of me was still swaying, undulating in my wavering eyesight. My head slowly rocked back and forth with it as the double vision of Sister Cornelia's boots approached me. Then with a strong grip, she tugged me on my hand. For some strange reason or another, when she did this, I failed to notice the unpleasant feeling that her hand wrapped tightly around mine brought. "Let's go, Toby," she instructed in an authoritative voice. Nearly dragging me, she pulled me to my feet, and before long, we were hightailing it out of there. The onlookers made quite a commotion as they moved hastily out of the way in a determined attempt not to be caught up in the middle of our flight path. The bag in my left hand swung helplessly, knocking against my thigh. After clearing the ticket gate, Sister Cornelia finally let go of my hand, but a sickening, slippery sensation came with it. Looking at her, I realized that the stomach-churning, slamming feeling on my hand had come from the bright red blood which stained both hers. I peered back over my shoulder in the direction of the platform as I continued to run, but the figures of those three men who had been waiting for me at the station were nowhere to be found. Emissary of the Sabbath. I sat staring at a partially melted lump of butter on a stack of cold pancakes. Picking up a fork, I poked at them, and after turning the top one over, I daubed the milky yellow substance between the rubbery layers. In doing so, my interest set in what sat atop my plate faded to nil. A hanging lamp dangled overhead, making a sporadic buzzing sound as its honey-colored lights flickered, creating jittery shadows and distorting my vision within the end. The pouring rain outside didn't appear as if it would let up any time soon either. Bringing my face close to the window, I peered through the film of water flowing down the outside of the glass as I tried to make out the dimly lit avenue. Although the station house sat right at the end of the road from where we were lodged, all that was visible was the side of the structure obscured by a shadow which prevented me from being able to see the platform. "There's nothing to worry about," said Sister Cornelia as she returned, wiping her hands with a handkerchief as white as newly driven snow. Stretching the square strip of cloth out, she sat down and placed it neatly on her lap like a napkin. Then in a reassuring tone, she added, "We've seen the last of them for a while." Watching the tips of her fingers move as she smoothed the wrinkles in the piece of fabric resting on her legs, I was hit with a sudden flashback, reviving the awful sight and coppery scent of the sticky blood which had covered those hands not more than a few hours before. How can you be so certain? I asked, still having more than a few reservations. Because that's how these types of crime syndicates work, she replied, clearly seeming to know all the answers. The waiter came and set a plate in front of Sister Carnelia with the soft clink as the base of the glassy dish tapped lightly against the hard surface of the table. After scooting the meat line porcelain plate closer to her, she licked off the sauce now covering the tips of her finger in an almost sensual way. Sickened by the bloody image already in my mind, and now with the sauce, I tossed my fork aside and lay heavily back in my chair. The city outside began to fade into shades of gray, and by the time Sister Carnelia was finished tucking away her steak, it had completely sunk into the darkness of night. I questioned her again. How can you be so certain that no one will come after us? Using a piece of black crusted bread to wipe out the last drops of the sauce, she answered, because that's how they function. One unit will consist of 3 people. Then, as if remembering something else important, she added, that group that was after you, they're a Jaeger Corps. Upon hearing this, I recalled seeing some of those men at the landing port some time ago. Only the most renowned and skilled of mercenary groups have the honor of calling themselves the Jaeger Corps. At least that's what Mick told me about them. They were soldiers of fortune who were fed to relentlessly follow the flow mirror wherever that happened to lead, and they would stop at nothing to get at it, even if it meant spilling blood. Warhawks, mercenaries without borders, and a group never to get involved with, is what Mick often had a habit of saying about them. Instinctively, I slid my foot forward and checked the location of my bag with the tip of it. It's quite simple, really, Sister Carnelia explained as she reached for her dessert. You, Toby, are carrying something that's apparently got a lot of people on edge, and someone's hired a Jaeger Corps to take you out. But it's not me they're after, it's what I'm carrying. It's all the same, she retorted as she gulped down her cup of tea in a single breath. They're going to kill the courier before they even think about searching the contents of his bag. A butcher kills a cow before someone grills a steak, not the other way around. Lecturing me all the while, Sister Carnelia took a glossy towel-handled knife in hand and sliced into her apple pie. The powdered sugar sprinkled on the flaky crust danced under the golden light. Felt a stabbing pain of guilt race through me just above my gut. Unexpectedly, I began to think about what Mick could be doing at the moment. But my short period of rumination was cut short when I saw Sister Carnelia's hand stop cold. Staring into the darkness, eyes focused and intent like a hunting dog, she tossed something shining onto the table and eventually rose to her feet. There was my omen. Where are you going? Without pausing to answer my question, Sister Carnelia expeditiously fastened the buckle of her coat. You've got good taste, Toby. One at a time, she set her heels on the chair and tied her bootlaces. Using the full capabilities of that omen is no small feat. I think even most braces would be in for a real surprise if push came to shove with you in the ring. Growing even more impatient, I asked her, so where is it exactly that you're going? That's none of your concern, came the answer. Suffice it to say, I will be seeing you again on tomorrow. And with that, Sister Carnelia disappeared through the door of the women's restroom. As if exchanging places, 2 other men entered the restaurant. They walked directly to the table at which I sat and stood before me. Flashing the emblem on his chest and without making any sort of eye contact, one of the men said, we're with the Bracer Guild. I apologize for disturbing you in the middle of your evening meal, but you'll need to come with us. Okay, I was gonna read the whole story today, but I'm tired, so we're gonna read one more chapter and then we'll read the other 5 next time. Ascertaining the inner workings, my ornament, empty bag, and package wrapped in old magazine paper were laid out neatly on the table in front of me. The Bracer sitting opposite me gazed alternately at my face and the items on the table as if trying to gauge my reaction to them. Constantly rubbing his shin between his fingers, it appeared to me as though he were making an effort to display his right hand snugly filled within a leather gauntlet. I had been led to the second floor of the lodge by the 2 men, and then after they had painstakingly checked the layout of the floor, I was taken to the farthest room from the stairs. It occurred to me that the reason for the use of the makeshift space was due to there being no guild branch nearby. The first man to stand in front of me was the lanky one. He told me his name, but I soon forgot which one was Clay and which one was Pavel. By the time I had finished being dressed, the Bracer wearing the gauntlets, Clay and Pavel, whoever it was, returned and whispered something in his partner's ear. It seemed as though they were trying to locate Sister Carnelia, but having no luck. After much probing on the subject of her in the Jaeger Corps, and after relaying everything I heard from her on the train, I turned the conversation around, playing the role of the victim and inquired into her past history. Though strictly speaking, I guess I was, in fact, a victim. Her name is Selnet. I'm Selnet. Read aloud lanky Bracer from a pocketbook he held just below eye level. Originally a constituent member of the Jaeger Corps, her present affiliation and activities are unknown. In short, added his partner pompously, she's not the type of person any upstanding citizen should be getting involved with. He reached out his gauntlet-clad hand and picked up the object bundled in scrap paper. Checking my reaction all the while, he unwrapped the paper, laying it flat on the center of the table. Its contents turned out to be a lump of metal ingrained with a sort of clay-like substance. I blurted out, I was on my way to a research institute with the item when everything happened, and then threw the address with some non-existent client for good measure. The bracelet took notes, making sure not to leave out any of the details of our conversation. Then, to dispel any lingering suspicions, I agreed to stay with them under the watchful eyes for the night. The next day, I also found myself inclined to go along with them to the nearest guild branch in order to file a report about the events that had happened back at the station. But I had no qualms over the matter. My greatest concern at the moment, after all, was not running into any more trouble. I awoke as the sun came up over the horizon and day broke. With the advent of a peaceful morning, I sat up in bed and breathed a sigh of relief. The bracelets who had still guarded the previous night were no longer present in the room, but the sound of their voices could be heard echoing out in the hallway beyond the closed door. Zipping my arms through the sleeves of my jacket, I felt a sharp pain in my right elbow, which brought back vivid memories of the woman from the day before. Suddenly, a feeling of uneasiness came over me, and still half undressed, I began adjusting my overnight. After opening its back cover, I used a thin piece of tanned doe skin, started plucking out the cords and installed each slot. It didn't take but 5 minutes to insert them each into different slots and rearrange the configuration, with the solid light magic as my base. One by one, I replaced each screw until finally the metallic panel was back in place, and as a feeling of calmness set in, I rolled back over in bed. It was at that time that a tall woman appearing to be a maid opened the door, carrying a basin of hot water for the sink with which guests could shave and wash their faces. After placing the small steaming tub on the table, the woman went quietly about her daily task of removing the bed linen. Finding myself shooting from my own bed, I reluctantly headed toward the basin when just beyond the open door, I caught sight of 2 shadows cutting across the hallway in succession. "They're here," I heard myself mutter as the low tone of my suppressed voice reached my ears. With only a bar of soap in hand, I remained unbelievably calm as I quickly shut and bolted the door. Then, pondering my next move, I stood still with my back pressed up against the wall. On the other side of the hard clay wall, the brief clamor of fighting ensued. Fumbling with the chain attached to my hip pocket, I grabbed hold of my ornament that I had adjusted barely moments before. With 2 bracelets versus 2 others I had seen moments ago. Throwing myself into the mix with the 2 men from the guild would definitely put us at an advantage from a numbers standpoint. However, when I turned again to face the door, the voice of self-doubt came percolating through my closed lips in the form of dismay. "There are only 2 of them?" I murmured to myself. Sister Carnelia's words were to be believed, and one unit consisted of 3 people, not 2. Again, I questioned myself inwardly. Then, where's the 3rd? The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as I realized my plight. Sun swung down over the top of my head, catching me around the neck, and the next instant I was flung to the ground. From the corner of my blurred and spy vision came the inexplicable view of a woman with demonic bloodshot eyes standing over me, trying to wrench the very life out of me with every twist of the sheet she had wrapped tightly around my throat. Clutching my ornament in hand, I activated and fired off a burst of magic while lying half asphyxiated on the wooden planks of the room floor. The destructive vortex of compressed air sliced deeply into my head, but at the same time caused the woman to double over before forcefully blowing her to another part of the room. Shreds of whirling linen, flecked and sprayed with fresh blood, blasted out through a gaping hole in the wall where a closed window once stood, leaving nothing behind but shards of broken glass and a frame rent beyond all repair. And we'll finish reading this next time. What? Next time on Trails in the Sky, we'll finish reading the book. I'll see y'all this Carnelia series. I'll see you all then.